Rabbi, the purpose of this class, and before I give this class, I want to be makdim a very, very important akdama, which I find is very, very important to stress. That is that the purpose of this class is not, God forbid, to be racist or anything like that. Chas v'sholom. We are not racist. Number one, I want to stress, and I want to stress this a million times, I have ultimate respect for all races and all creeds. And I say that not because of political correctness. If we were locked on an island and I was the Melech Malchei Amlochim, and I had super nuclear energy surrounding me from all sides and I could say whatever I want, and no one could touch me, I would still say that I respect all races and all creeds, and every race and every creed has its own version of beauty. It is not right, it is despicable for a white man to tell a black man or for what beauty is. The black man will decide in his culture what beauty is, and he'll tell the white man, gay fife. And the white man will tell the black man, I will decide in my culture what beauty is, as well as the Mongoloid. You have three types of races, Negroid, Caucasoid, and Mongoloid. Those are scientific terms for the black race, the white race, and the Asian-looking race. And the Mongoloid race, the Asian race, will decide in its culture what is beautiful, and no race has the right to tell another race what is beautiful in their culture. However, I do have the right to establish what historically Jews in ancient times considered beautiful. So there will be expressions that will sound a little bit sharp throughout the shiur, but it's not sharp. The ancient rabbis were writing for a Jewish crowd, and they were describing, thank you very much, they were describing the look that the ancient Jews had, and they were praising their own look. They were praising their own culture, which is fine. As long as you praise your own culture, but you recognize that other cultures have the right to consider beauty what they want, it's perfectly fine. So last time, before we get to business, every race and every creed has equal rights and is equally special. The Jewish people, not as a race, because if a black convert becomes Jewish, he's as Jewish as me. If a Chinese convert becomes Jewish, he's as Jewish as me. I'm sorry. There are certain elements in Judaism that are racial and will always remain racial. For example, being a king in Judaism, you have to be from the Davidic dynasty. A Kohen or a Levi will always be racial, but being Jewish won't be always racial. It is technically because very few people convert. Judaism, Kohen, Levi, and Melech are racial aspects. However, Yisrael is be'etzem a non-racial aspect. This that we find, that Judaism is a race, is specifically because, historically speaking, very few people wanted to convert. So Yisraelim became a race by default, not because Be'etzem Yisraelim are a race. They became a race by default because nobody wanted to convert. Nobody wants to convert.
There's no black Kohanim.
There are no black Kohanim. No, unless of course, unless of course the Kohen married a woman that descends from a black family, then they could. But Be'etzem originally, no. But again, I want to explain, I want to be makdim, and I'm stressing this 1,000 times over because this is a fundamental principle which I say not because of political correctness. I say this with truth. All races and all creeds have equal rights. Judaism accepts all races and all creeds equally. Outside of Kohen, Levi, Yisrael, at Kohen, Levi, and Melech, there is no racial aspect to Judaism Be'etzem. Theoretically speaking, all Goyim in the world could convert today. And Judaism will that very moment cease to be a race. Outside of Kohen, Levi, and Melech, Judaism will cease to be a race. This that it is a race is because even today very few people want to convert. Kol shekein l'Gavachaymer in the medieval period, in the ancient times, the Jews were constantly persecuted. Nobody wanted to convert. Who wants to convert to live in a ghetto and wear a badge and a funny looking hat and be persecuted? Nobody wants to do that. So Judaism, the Yisraelim aspect of Judaism became a race by default, but the Be'etzem Judaism outside of the Kohen, Levi, Melech is a non-racial group. All races are equally accepted into Judaism. All races are equally respected in Judaism, and every race has its own version of what it considers beauty, and it will define for itself what is beauty. And we have to respect the definition, but it is wrong, and it is a chutzpah for anybody to come to a specific race and say, you better adopt the other race's version of beauty. There are liberals today that want to come to white people and say you have to adopt the African version of beauty. Excuse me. I'm European. I want to stick to the European version. He's African. He should be proud of his African heritage. Many African Americans did great things for this country. Just to mention one, and this is only so many more we can mention, but Ben Carson is just in our times, the man who made the first surgery on Siamese twins, and there's so many others. I'm just mentioning one because this is not the point of the shiur. I hope we understand that these words are coming from a legitimate place. I have ultimate respect for black people, and I've always respected them. And there's no need to say that Rabbi Gazinski is being PC. He's not. I'm talking from my heart. There's many special black people. What we will be describing is many. And they should be very proud of all the great contributions they have done and still do. The point of this shiur is not to describe the black people of beauty is for them. It's to describe what the ancient Israelites consider beautiful. Not only that, I don't think the rabbis are forcing you to decide what beauty is for you. If you don't agree with the description they give here, it's perfectly fine. It doesn't say in Shulchan Aruch, "Hayehudi chayav lahaskim im hagdolas hayofi shehiskinu chachmi Yisrael batkufa ha'atika." No, it doesn't say that.
What about the Torah and Tanakh?
You do not have to accept this definition of beauty for yourself. It's not halacha and Shulchan Aruch. If it is, you have to. But it's not. This is what the rabbis considered beautiful in ancient times. Give me a moment, please.
Okay.
Now, what we will be describing in this class is going to be what the color of Jewish people was in ancient times. I will ask people to try to hold back on the questions till after the shiur, that way we can cover it. You have over here literally 28 sources. Rabbi said this is less than a fifth of the actual sources on the subject, and we will not be able to get to all the sources. I compiled these sources from some from memory, some from several articles from several different journals, and specifically 2 journals that I drew upon heavily, but there are other journals as well that I took information from. And I worked on this quite a while. What was the color of Jewish people in ancient times? There's anti-Semites that wanted Rahman al-Islam go around and say all kinds of things about specifically Ashkenazi Jews. And make no mistake about it, they hate all Jews equally, but since Ashkenazi Jews have 2 unique features. 1, they make up majority of the Jewish community. 2, they are also white, and therefore the liberals want to hate them extra. And many honest black people will tell this to themselves. Black people, of whom many of them are big lovers of Jews, will tell it to themselves, this is disgusting. So I'm not criticizing the black community, which I have ultimate respect for. But the reality is that there is a terrible, terrible trend to bash white people now. Of course, it's also a trend to be anti-Semitic. So combine anti-Semitic and anti-white together, it's not much for the cherry on top. And therefore, that's the second thing. So again, the first thing that drives it is the majority of Jews are Ashkenazi. So when you attack Ashkenazi Jews, you're delegitimizing the majority of Jews. It's A. B, it's also a fun way to do anti-Semitism because you can couple it with anti-whiteism. And the third aspect is, this is a historical fact. 99.9% of the founders of the state of Israel were Ashkenazi Jews. From Herzl, who was a German-Hungarian Jew, to Ben-Gurion, who was a Polish Jew, to Jabotinsky, who was a Russian Jew, to all the others. To Eliezer ben Yehuda, whose real name is Eliezer Perlman, before he changed it. They all like to change their names from the shtetl names that they were so embarrassed of, shame on them. But like upon them, either way, bottom line, all of them, every single one of the founders of the state of Israel were Ashkenazim. That's not because Ashkenazim loved Israel more. That's because Ashkenazim had 2 features that pushed them to found the state of Israel. 1, they were the ones going through the heavy pogroms and the Holocaust. 2, so for them it was Pashut refuge from physical persecution, and not everybody could get into the United States because the United States was very anti-Semitic then and put a quota, and many other countries put a quota throughout the early 1900s for how many Jews can come in. Officially it was how many Eastern Europeans can come in, but we all know that was bogus. It was how many Jews, because most Jews lived in Eastern Europe. It was all phony. And the reality is that that's the first thing. Secondly, the Sephardim at the time were suffering under the terrible barbarism of the Arabic world, which was very backward, and therefore they had no education in modern things like running factories and stuff like that. By the way, for that matter, the Orthodox Jews also didn't have education in that tchum. So Ashkenazi Orthodox Jews were exactly the same thing. The secular, they were pushing better at practical things, so they were able to found a practical country. They were able to get the factories running, they were able to get the technical stuff running, how to make the roads, how to make the military, how to make the weapons. Just they were secular Ashkenazim, so they were better at that. It doesn't make them any better than Sephardim, Chas v'sholom. We owe so much to Sephardim, starting from the great spread of Kabbalah. Of course, there was great Kabbalah of Ashkenazim as well, but the Sephardim had a big part in spreading it, and also, of course, the Rambam, who is considered the brain of the Jewish people. Important, and this is the last notice before I get to business, and that is, many of you might ask the question, how do we reconcile this with the look of Sephardic Jews? Please wait to the end of the class and I will address that. I will address at the end of the class. And I will give a special couple of minutes to devote to that. And now Rabbi said, without any further ado, business. So, we need to find out what the color of Jews was in ancient times. The best source to begin is from Bereshis Rabbah, Parsha Pevov, Siman Dalet. All of the sources listed here, minus a couple of them, virtually all of them are from ancient sources. The Hainu, they are either from biblical sources, or they are from Talmudic sources. Now, if a secular heretic wants to say the rabbis of the Talmud are not the rabbis of ancient Israel, he's insane. Because without the Talmud, there is no Torah. Who gave us the Nusach of the Torah? Who gave us the actual scroll of the Torah? It is the rabbis of the Talmud. It is the rabbis of the Talmud, the rabbis of Tiberias, whether it was Ben Asher and Ben Naphtali and all these rabbis who lived in the 9th century Tiberias, they were all Talmudic rabbis. They're the ones who gave us the actual Nusach of the Torah. To say that the Jews of the Second Temple era and the Mishnah and the Gemara are not descendants of the ancient Jews of the Bible, you have to be quite cuckoo. All Jews around the world, whether it's Ashkenazim, Sephardim, Teimanim, or Jews from India, all accept the Talmud and the Mishnah as the main basis of our whole knowledge of anything. So therefore, to say that a source from the Talmud or Talmudic sources of Second Temple era is not equal enough to First Temple era is insane. I don't even want to address such stupidity. Let's go weiter. And yes, the rabbis who wrote the Talmud all lived in the Middle East. Yeah. The hot sunshine Middle East, correct. So, source number one. Bereshis Rabbah Parsha Pevov Siman Dalet deals, as well as Yalkut Shemoini Remez Kuf Mem Hey, as well as Tanchuma. I didn't write specifically where in Tanchuma, but Tanchuma, the Bober version, in the Hakdama, Ksav Yad Gimel Siman Tazayim, as well as Medrash Seichel Toiv, we have up here, Bereshis Lamates. All of these sources say the following fact. The question is, it says, Yosef Hurad Mitzrayim. Yosef was brought down to Mitzrayim by Yikneu Poitifar, Savis Paroi Sarat Abochim, Ish Mitzri, Miyad Ishmaelim, Asher Haridu Sham. It's good to do Kriyas HaTorah, it's good to be able to helps you memorize the verses. It becomes like a song in your head, huh? So the kids here, it says, Yosef Hurad Mitzrayim. Yosef was brought down to Mitzrayim after he was sold as a slave by his brothers, by Yikneu Poitifar, Sarat Abochim. Poitifar, who was the head of the Tabochim, which according to most Mefarshim means he ran the kitchen. Ish Mitzri, he was also homosexual, which only made the challenge for Yosef so difficult to be around him, because Yosef was a very beautiful person. If there was a big Nisayon for Yosef, and he had Potifar's wife, who was also lacking love because her husband was homosexual, and that's why it's called Sris Pare, because he unfortunately tampered with certain parts of his body, and what happens is he became a Soris. And Rahman Islam basically, yeah, there's a whole thing, and what happens is basically, so Yosef was stuck from both sides. Potifar was homosexual and wanted him because he was a beautiful man, and then Zlicha, the wife of Potifar, also wanted him. Very, very sad. This only made the Nisayon for Yosef so difficult, and yet Yosef overcame everything. Yet Yosef established Yiddishkeit in Mitzrayim, Mamash HaShliach of the Rebbe all the way. But the bottom line, it shows us the greatness. But it says, Vayikneu Potifar Sarat Abachim Ish Mitzri Miyad HaYishne'elim. Why does it say Ish Mitzri? He bought him from the hands of the Arabs and sold him. Why does it say Ish Mitzri? What is the Ish Mitzri? Of course he was Ish Mitzri. If you say he was sold to Egypt, we understand automatically he's Ish Mitzri. Says the Medrash, the Mitzrim were very intelligent. They were very intelligent. They were considered the superpower of the time. Gavro Armo'o. He was a clever man. And he asked them as follows. He told them, B'chol Mokoim, in every place, Germoni Moicheres Hakushi. The German sells the black man. The Khan, but we're in no way, shape, or form agreeing to slavery, God forbid. We root that out completely. Judaism was the first ones to root that out. The word is in ancient times, it was just a practice that was happening. So Judaism was not persecuting, it was just what was happening around the entire world. I want to stress that as well. But like upon it, either way, the Chol Mokim in every place, the blacks were doing it also. The African peoples also had the concept of slavery amongst each other. It was something which was done all around the world. The Jewish people only did it with those who didn't keep the 7 Noahide laws, and that was equal to black, white, or anything. It is true, however, that there was a strong persecution on the black people from people from the Germanic countries. That is true. That was, of course, something which had to be rectified in the Civil War. But like upon them, either way, bottom line, but that wasn't from the Jewish people, it was from the Germanic people. So the Medrash says, B'chol Mokim, in every place, Germoni Moiche Kushi, the German sells the black man. The Kana over here, Kushi Moiche Germani, the black man is selling the German. What was he telling them? Look at the commentaries over there. What he was telling them was as follows: Yosef is white like a German, and you are black like Africans, because the Arabs are very, very dark skinned. So therefore, he should be selling you. Why are you selling him? That is what he told them. Give me proof that he's actually that you bought him legitimately, you didn't just kidnap him off the road. If you have any doubts if that's the pshat, first of all, that's the pshat from the Medrash itself, but the Medrash Seichel Toy makes it even clearer and says clearly that he said, Germoni Perushay Halovon, the white man, Moichir Sakushi, referring to the darker peoples. The Bali Atoisves al Atoira, which is located in, and that's of course the Bereshis Lamed Zayin Chavches. The Bali Atoisves al Atoira, we're moving on to already source number 2.
Who's saying?
They interpret the Bali Atoisves as the.
Who's saying Bechal Makim? Who's quoting? Who's the?
Poitifar was saying that to the Ishmaelim. So the Bali Atoisves explained clearly that the Nakuda is that Yosef was white like a German and the Arabs are dark. Now skip down for a moment. The Arabs are called Kushim in more than one place, but just a specific source for that concept. Look at source 9, Medrash Tanchuma Nosoi Zayin. Maasa b'melech ha'arvim sheshoal es Rabbi Akiva. The story with the king of the Arabs that asked Rabbi Akiva, Ani Kushi v'ishti Kushis. I am a Kushi, my wife is a Kushi. V'yodali ben Lovon, she gave birth to a white son. She must have cheated on me. So we see the Arabs are referred to as Kushim, which means to say that Jews not only were not as dark as Schwarzes, as African people of a Negroid race, but they are not even as dark as Arabs, who are a mix of Negroid and Caucasoid. They weren't even as dark as Arabs. They were white. They were Caucasian-looking people. If you want to argue with it, take it up with the rabbis from the ancient Middle East, the authors of the Bereshis Rabbah, which precedes even the Gemara, and is the most powerful of all the Midrashim. As Rashi says, he agodas Eretz Yisrael. Rashi even wrote a commentary on Bereshis Rabbah. It's one of the most ancient Midrashim we have from the ancient Middle East. So we see clearly Yosef was white, like a German. Yes, like a German. Which means
there wasn't even have to at the time.
There were Germans, of course there were Germans.
Germanic
peoples that they knew from the Romans and were Germanic peoples.
Okay,
the reality is that there were. By the way, I'm ready to stay after if anybody wants to ask questions. But I'm listening. I spent an hour almost with somebody asking questions, and he wasn't even from the Chabura here last week. So I'll stay to answer any questions you have to the best of my ability, of course, with Abish's help. So, one more point. Yosef, it says in the Medrash, looked like Yaakov. And Yaakov looked like Yitzchak, who looked like Avraham, which means that this was the official look of the Avos. White, like a German. Also, they consider white beautiful. As the Bali Atosfos say clearly, Pirushe Lovon V'Yofe. Lovon V'Yofe. The Bali Atosfos add, beautiful, good looking. In the famous Piyut, written by the great German Jewish poet, this is taka not an ancient source, so a secular historian will come and say, yeah, this is already from an Ashkenazi source from the medieval period, doesn't count. I don't care. Fine. So to them I'll have a medrash, but for you guys, we know the Rishonim are, of course, emes. Whatever the Rishonim say is holy. So I'm just mentioning the great Rabbi Menachem ben Zerach, one of the great German Jewish Paitonim, one of the great poets of the Hebrew literature of all times. In his famous Piyut of Shabbos Eil, which Chabad does not recite, Chabad recites very little poetry because, as it says in the Sefer Beis Rebbe, that they wanted Chasidim Shadaven Ba'avoida, because the davening had to take at least an hour and a half, and for Shabbos davening was close to 2.5 hours. The only shul in Crown Heights pretty much that does that is Hadav Torah, the shul where I lay Mokshem every Shabbos. But up upon him either way, the fact of the matter is that if you would have to say Piyutim, the davening would never end. But in Ashkenaz tradition, I'm talking Yeket Jewish tradition, German Jewish tradition, Italian Jewish tradition, French Jewish tradition, the real Ashkenaz of Central and Western Europe, they would say a lot of piyutim, a ton of piyutim. Even today, the Litvaks say much more piyutim than we do. But they would mamish, the Yekes say the most piyutim of all. They mamish, they have piyutim for every Shabbos of the year almost, they used to have piyutim. So for the piyut for Shabbos HaGodol, which starts by Meres Oni Maasai Lamelech, he writes poetically, Chaloimois Choylim Germoni Lekabel Morus. The German is dreaming of having power. That doesn't sound very good in a modern World War II article, Chas v'Sholom. We're not talking about that, of course, but we're talking about Yosef. What does he mean? The German is having a dream of power. Yosef had a dream he would be powerful. How does he poetically call him? The Germoni. Notice he took out the Vov, because he made sure to write Germoni. There's different Gersais. Everybody agrees that Germoni means love. The question is, does Germoni mean Miloshin Gorem? Gorem means a bone in Hebrew, and bones are white. Or does it mean Germoni as German? Most Gersais have it as Germoni in all these sources. Some Gersais have Garmoini, which means white like a bone. It still means white, but white like a bone, very, very white. But the bottom line is, he was Medayik to write Germoni. Another source, and again, I always say I must stress this. I'm stressing this because it's a very, very serious thing. We as Jews have to show respect to all human beings, not because we're afraid. If we had the ultimate power and we were the most muscular and walked down the street and everybody was terrified of us, we would still show this respect to all human beings. We're not here to bash other races. It's not the purpose. And again, the rabbis are not telling you what you should like, what kind of color. If you want to marry any color, as long as they convert to Yiddishkeit and keep Yiddishkeit and follow the ways of Torah, to marry any color you want. The rabbis are not telling you what to marry. This is all about what the rabbis considered beautiful in their culture back then. So if anybody wants to say Jews were black, he's hacking in China. Jews were white, Germanic-looking people. That is the fact. That is what the sources say. If you do not like it, take it up with the ancient Middle Eastern rabbis. So, another source. Yeah.
Is it only the rabbis? It's also the Torah. When the Torah uses a lot of times, we say Torah.
We're going to get to the biblical sources. We have here 28 sources. Let's try to cover it. Okay, so we did 3 already. Not bad. There's another source, which is a source indeed that is coming from a source that is coming from Rashi, but it has other sources as well. If you take a look in the Bereshis Rabbah, Parsha Mem Siman Dal. I should have written that. That's one mistake I made. I should have written that the Bereshis Rabbah also says it, because again, we're trying to use sources from ancient Middle East. Rashi is an Ashkenazi source from a Franco-Germanic rabbi. Rashi was an Ashkenazi rabbi. He's practically the ancestor of all Ashkenazim today. I stam from Rashi. I'm sure pretty much every Ashkenazi rabbi table stams from Rashi.
Really?
Basically, yeah, Rashi is the ancestor for 90% of Ashkenazim today. They even had an article about it recently. Yeah, yeah, because everybody somehow mixes into Rashi's blood one way or the other. But anyway, the bottom line is that Rashi mentions it, but it comes from the Bereshis Rabbah. So take out your pens and add to 4. You'll gain out of this. Add to 4, because you want to also have an ancient Middle Eastern source to back this up. So take out your pens. I'm sorry, I should have done that. That was on my part. That was on my part of miscalculation. Right. So please add to the statement of Rashi in the beginning of Lech Lecha. You must add, because it changes the whole dynamic. You must add Bereshis Rabbah Parsha Mem Siman Dalet. Bereshis Rabbah Mem Dalet. Parsha Mem Siman Dalet. Mem Dalet. If you add that, you'll be very, very happy. You'll have an ancient Middle Eastern source to back it up. While you're adding it, I'll chaperayim, another cup of water.
You can put the source on the chat after.
You can write Piska, you can write Simon, either one is fine. Thank you for the water. You did a fuss of somebody else. This time wasn't put, so it was pneumo. Okay, the Medrash. Now, be very, very careful when you're saying over this Medrash, not because you have to hide the Medrash, but you have to interpret it properly. They were talking about their understanding of beauty back then. Our understanding of beauty might have changed, and that's okay. That's fully okay. Every race and every culture has their version of beauty. In ancient times, in the Jewish world, they were very much on the white look. You don't have to agree with that. It's okay if you don't. They were very into the white look. And so, Rabbi Zeira says in the name of Rabbi Simon.
Hey, Sebastian.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Rabbi Zeira says in the name of Rabbi Simon, and Rashi quotes this, the question. Vayehi kasher hikriv lovei Mitzrayim, and it was when he came close to Mitzrayim, vayomer sarai ishtehinu yadati ki shefas marat, behold, I know you're beautiful. Until now, he didn't know she was beautiful. Oh, he found out now. There's different pirushim, but the one pirush which Rashi says is closest to Pshat, and Rashi identifies as the most Pshat Pshat, says Pshutay Shal Nikra, and it comes from the ancient Rabbi Zeira in the name of Rabbi Simon, who says like this: we went in Aram Naharayim and Aram Nocher, an ancient area of Syria. We didn't find anybody beautiful like you. Achshov now, but then I didn't have to worry about your beauty because we were amongst white people. And therefore I didn't have to worry about your beauty. I didn't have to worry about your beauty. I didn't have to worry about it. Because even though you're the most beautiful woman, but at the end of the day, I didn't have to worry about your beauty because we were amongst white people, so the craving wouldn't be so strong. But Achshov now, she'onu nichnosim lemokim ke'ulim u'shchayrim, now that we're coming into a place of ugly and black people, again, this was, first of all, you must understand when they say ugly, they're talking about the Egyptians. Naturally, when you have a race that persecuted you, you're going to hate them. So you're going to say things that are very upsetting. You're going to say strong things to them, and you have the right to. Just like, because they were a race that harmed you. It doesn't mean, of course, there are many, many beautiful, good-looking black people, of course, it's not. But bottom line, they said, we're coming into a place of black and ugly people. Rashi explains, even adds one detail to the Medrash, that the ancient Egyptians didn't have a good-looking woman. Therefore, the time has come to be very careful about your beauty. In other words, once again, for their taste, that was their taste. But the ancient Israelites preferred very much and liked very much the Germanic, Caucasian look, and Avraham and Sarah were Caucasian looking. That is not what I say, that is what the ancient Middle Eastern rabbis say. Backed up by the greatest commentary of the whole Torah and the whole Talmud, Rabbi Solomon, the son of Isaac, Treish.
Rashi is also implying, though, that the Egyptians too preferred white people.
Rashi was implying that the Egyptians preferred white people, correct, but again, that's what the Egyptians preferred. That doesn't mean other groups prefer that. But that was what they preferred. You must also understand that the Egyptians were a very filthy people.
They're perverse.
And therefore, anything new to them, they would rather jump on also. But of course, the Pashup shot is what you're saying. That they also prefer. But that was the Egyptians. Doesn't mean that all races and creeds wanted that. That's the Egyptians. Yes, that's what the Egyptians prefer. Next. Again, very important to constantly understand. This is not a class on how to define beauty for today. This is what the ancient Israelites were interested in.
This is Torah, isn't this Torah?
Correct. But at the end of the day, it's not a halacha and shulchan aruch, that this is what you have to like.
It's different. It's Torah.
Those don't have to like
Here,
3-year-olds.
see, Rabbi say,
I'll,
if you don't mind, let's try to save the questions for after Pasha. Give me a moment. Next source is Bereshis Rabbah. Bereshis Rabbah, another ancient Middle Eastern Israelite source. We're quoting a lot of Bereshis Rabbah, it's a very powerful medrash. I said before, Rashi says, He agodas Eretz Yisrael. Many of the midrashim were written in Babylon, but the midrashim of ancient Israel were considered superior because they came from ancient Israel. Not only that, they were very close to the authors of the Mishnah. The author of Bereshis Rabbah is Rab Hoishi Rabbah. You know who he is? The student of Rebbe who helped make the Braises. It's a pretty powerful authority behind those words. So therefore, when you say Bereshis Rabbah, you're touching upon a heavy hitter. Bereshis Rabbah Parsha Samach Siman Ches. It says like this: Rivka Achu Shemoy Lavan. Rivka had a brother by the name of Lavan. Why was he called Lavan? Rabbi Yitzchok Omar L'Shevach. Rabbi Yitzchok says that it's a praise. Pardokos, which is similar to the word paradox, which means like opposites. It's a Greek word, and that word is basically a Greco-Roman word. And that word, you have different Greco-Roman words that made their way into the jargon of Torah, right? Because the rabbis lived in Eretz Yisrael, which at the time was under the control of the Greco-Roman world. And so, Mahu Paradokos, what does it mean Paradokos? So he says, it means Lovon B'Yoyse. If you take a look over there, Nosson Bar Yechiel, the great Oruch, who's the main one of the main translators of all the ancient Aramaic words in the Torah. He was a great holy Italian Jewish rabbi, lived right around the time of Rashi in the 11th century. And he says that it means very extreme white. He was very, very white. In other words, the whiter for the ancient Israelites was considered the better.
So he was like albino, or
not albino, because that would be ugly, and that's considered not good. But he was very, 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 very strong white. And that was considered a praise for Lavan. That gave him a superiority. So they considered the whiter the better. Again, this was the ancient Israelites' taste. Next is a Sephardic source. Rabbeinu Yitzchak Abarbanel, Don Yitzchak Abarbanel, in Maine HaYeshua. Now, this a little bit is a source that we must stress. Of course, it's a great, great rabbi, a very, very holy rabbi. But again, and I'm mentioning it here because for us it doesn't make a difference if it's ancient sources or not. If one of the later rabbis tell you something, you also accept it because these are the great rabbis of the Torah. But this is a source that I must stress is you're going to have a hard time arguing with it in a debate because it's not an ancient source from the ancient Middle East. It's written by a European Sephardic rabbi. But nevertheless, I'm mentioning it because I want to show you what the perspective also of Gedolei Yisrael was throughout the generations. And that is, he writes in Ma'ayon Dalet Tomar Dat, Ma'ayon Test Tomar Dalet, by Ma'ayin Yeshua is a sefer about Mashiach, the Chagav. He slugs up Christianity over there, many other things. He speaks over there, he says that the Yishuv Hamadini in ancient times, the civilization was divided into three places. One was the Africans, one was Asia, and he says then was Yefes. And he says Yefes includes Greeks, Eretz Yovon, it includes Alemania, which is Germany, it includes Francia, which is France, and Spania, which is Spain. And he says, Europe was blessed b'yofi ha'anoshim, with the beauty of men, uma'alosom u'shleimus midoseihem, their great advantages, and the incredible completion of their attributes. In other words, at the end of the day, once again, he's saying that the ancient Israelite perspective was that they liked very much the whiteness. Another source is an ancient source from the Middle East, Masechta Soita. Sounds pretty standard, no? Chavov Aleph. It says over there, Niksov and Israel Zola, and she will become cleansed, and she will give birth to Zerah, to seed. That is to say, if the woman who was accused of being not faithful to her husband, exactly, if she was accused of that, so we are going to remove any of that accusation, and we are going to basically they're going to test her with the waters of the Saita, and they're going to test her with the waters of the Saita, and if she passes the test, then God will cleanse her seed and make her seed perfect. What is that? So it says over there, Hoysa, one of the options is if she was giving birth to girls, she'll start giving birth to boys. They say let us Kaviks, you let us Schodim. And it says, Hoysa, you let us Schodim. She was giving birth to black kids. You let us Levonim. She will give birth to white kids. Again, the ancient Israelites prioritized the white look. I do want to stress that in African sources, you find that they prioritize many times their black look. And that's only natural and healthy. Every race must love the way it looks and must crave towards its specific look. If you look in African sources, you'll find an abundance about how they praise their look in all their writings. And that's perfectly good and normal for them. And so too with Asian people, and so too with white people. Everybody should love the way they look. Yes. It says, should be allowed to express that in a refined manner. Yes.
In Gemara site that says that if she had girls, she's gonna have boys. If she had a darker kid, black kids, she'll have white kids. Does it say also if she had boys, she'll have girls?
No.
So then it's prioritizing also males over females.
The ancient Israelites clearly prioritized males as well.
Right. So that's correct.
That's a very good point. Yes,
Discovered.
Yes.
When we say black, do we mean like there was a white and a black person that got married and protected with that situation, or do we mean just darker and later kids?
No, it probably means to say that because the ancient Israelites prioritized the white look, that's what they liked. So therefore they wanted very much the kids to be as white as possible. So if the kid was getting too much melatonin in his skin, they wanted him to be very, very light.
Correct, but I don't think it means from actual black to white, because I don't see how the same parents could have a black and white.
No, it's possible. According to the Medrash, it's possible. You could have sometimes. You have cases where you have parents that are very white and they have some of their kids a little bit darker. It could happen sometimes. It happens sometimes. In any case, it could also happen from the ancient Israelites, wanted very much white, and if the kid had a little bit too much melatonin, so they wanted him to be very, very as white as possible. That's what they prioritized. Now again, it can also happen according to the Medrash from the scenery. At the time when there's the unity between the husband and wife, the scenery in the room can affect the actual look of the child. That's what Rabbi Akiva, by the way, told that Arab king. He said, "My wife cheated on me. The kid came out so white." And he said, "No, in your room at the time, did you surround yourself with a white garb, with white sheets and white clothing?" And he said, "Yeah." And he said that affected the child. That's how it is according to the Medrash. And it must be in order that could also happen. Or it could happen that sometimes when a woman gets sickly, so the kids come out looking different than her because she gets sickly. So therefore it can affect the look of the kids, that the kids should look different than the normal way of looking because she gets sickly. You understand? So that can change, that can have different changes on how the kid actually comes out. The kid won't look so much like his parents because the woman is in a sickly state. So she alone, let's say, because of sickness, gets a little bit darker, let's say, and that can affect the child to come out darker. When a black person is black, he's just looking his normal way, of course, but when a white person suddenly gets very, very dark, that's a sign. Just like just like, if you have a, let's say you have a black person who's getting a little bit too white suddenly, that means there's something wrong with his body, right? So the same thing if a white person's getting a little bit too dark, it means there's something wrong with his body. It's not the natural way they look. So that could also be an aspect over there. Now, because I'm an open-minded person, and I like to leave, we're all, Baruch Hashem here, open-minded people. We're raised in the yeshiva. Yeshiva teaches us how to be open-minded, firm on our principles, but yet open-minded. So we're not afraid, what I mean to say, what am I saying now? I'm not starting throwing fluff. I'm not afraid for a challenge. So I threw in a challenge here. There's a medrash that clearly seems to imply the opposite. Also from the ancient Israelites. Let me read to you a Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, which seems to knock down everything I just said. Unless you want to say that the ancient rabbis themselves were fighting with each other. It says over there, Fakert. And let me read to you what the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer says. It said, this Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer is 8. Perek Chav Dalet. It says, God blessed Shem and his sons, and they are black and beautiful. Shchayim Benon, they're black and beautiful. He blessed Chum and his sons, and they are black like a raven. He blessed Yefes and his sons, and they are white and beautiful. Oops. That knocks everything, what's going on? The rabbis, so the truth is, it's B'chal not a kasha. Not even a kasha slightly.
Why can't Shem be?
Because
why can't Shem and the sons be?
We're from Shem.
Yeah, I know.
We're from Shem. The Jews are from
change
Shem.
at some point.
So how does that work out? Unless you want to say that Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer is arguing with all the other ancient Israelite rabbis. So the ancient Israelites themselves had a debate. Obviously not, right?
The simple understanding is that Shem was tan.
No. It's based on a pasuk. It's very simple. You look up the pasuk. It's paraphrase, and I'll explain to you what it is. It's a paraphrase. Notice he's not talking over there. First of all, he's saying that first of all, notice that he says he blessed Chum, which I like that very much. He blessed Chum, and Chum is black like a raven. In other words, he's not bashing the look of the people of Chum in this medrash. He's not bashing the look at all. He's saying he blessed them. He blessed them. What he's actually saying, he's talking about the climates. Shchoyra v'nava is a quote from the pasuk. Shechoyra ani v'nava is a verse that comes from Shir HaShirim. And at the beginning of Shir HaShirim, it says over there, Shchoyra ani v'nava. I said that Shir HaShirim, so something music came for Shir HaShirim. It's very poetic, it has to do with the music. Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs. We'll see that's all planned out. Shimon Khan wrote it out. They had come at the right time. So Shir HaShirim came at the right time. Song of Songs. So the kitzur of Maisa is Shchoyra ani v'nava means I am beautiful, but I am black. B'nei Yerushalayim. Ke'ohole keder, like the dark tents of the Arabs. Kivya is shloima, the curtains of Solomon. But the next verse right after says, Al tir'uni she'ani shchar choyres. Don't call me black. Sheshizofasni ashomesh. I've been tanned by the sun. B'nei imi micharuvi. The sons of my mother, which means my fellow family members, have shunned me. Samuni neiteiros akronim. They forced me to guard the vineyards all day, and therefore I became dark-skinned because of the tan. Which means it's not be'etzim. It's not be'etzim white, the black. It's just the tan, which any white person, if you put him out to guard vineyards in the hot boiling sun, he's going to tan very quickly. I can tell you myself that I spent a kufa in Mexico, quite a while actually. I spent a full year in La Paz, Cabo San Lucas, that area, and I doing shlichus for Rabbi Hershkowitz and for other rabbis. I was also working with Rabbi Eli Engelson over there and others.
Gutierrez also?
Yosef Gutierrez was working with him. No, I actually was under Rabbi Eli Engelson. That's who I was under, but he was the one that broke me down. But we were also working with Rabbi Ben Hershkowitz. He was like the dean of our whole program. Was like Rabbi Hershkowitz in the background. But the one, of course, who I specifically was running our specific program was Rabbi Eli Engelson. Rabbi Eli Engelson. But in any case, the point is, the bottom line. When I came back from Mexico, and again, this is La Paz, it's mamash on the equator. You walk outside, you have to take another shower every 5 minutes. It's boiling hot. And I walked outside, and I got tanned. I came back, and I looked nice and tan. I was really tan. So the word is, obviously, if you put a white man out in the sun for a very long time, he's going to get tanned. What's the Medrash saying? The Medrash is saying that he blessed everyone with their special climate. The climate of the people of Shem is a stronger climate than the people of Yefes. And the climate of the people of Chum is even stronger than the climate of the people of Shem. So it's basically different climates. That's what he's discussing. He's discussing the climates. And he's saying Hashem blessed each place with its unique climate. Every continent has its special climate. But Adarabah, when he says Shchoira v'nova, Shchoira v'noim, he's paraphrasing from Ashirim. So he's referencing that pasuk. It's not a contradiction. So the Etzim Jews are white. The proof gets even better. If you take a look, the Medrash stresses that those Jews who spent more time indoors used to be whiter. And the more time you spent, now in Europe, it doesn't make a difference if you're outdoors or indoors, but in the Middle East it does. Which Medrash am I talking about? Oops. So we're going to skip to 15, and then we're going to go back. Don't worry, we're not missing anything. But we're going to skip to 15. Sikta Zutrusa, Lekach Toiv, Eichel Perek Dalet Siman Beis. It says over there a very, very interesting statement. It says over there like this, listen carefully. It says, Azoi Emenot, a moment. B'nei Tzion HaYekorim, HaMesuloim Bapos, the beautiful, beautiful sons of Zion, which are so precious and honorable, that are like gold. HaMesuloim Bapos, says the Medrash, Ke'erech Dmus HaPoz, like gold, like fine gold, Dmus B'nei Yisrael. Looked was the look of the Jewish people. B'nei Yerushalayim, he's talking specifically about the sons of Jerusalem who were rich and successful. Me'unogim u'funokim, they were pleasurable, they always enjoyed pleasure of the beauty of the riches of Jerusalem, the gold of Jerusalem, the gold of Jerusalem. They were spoiled, they were like even spoiled. They were living in luxurious homes. The Hainu, they used to spend time in their home. They didn't have to be out in the sun. They had servants to do that for them. And therefore they were tzachim, whitish, va'adumim, pinkish, v'no'im, and beautiful, kamei like gold. The Hainu, Medrash is acknowledging that some Jews who spent a very, very long time outside did naturally get darker. Not be'etzem. Pashut, because you put any white person out in the sun, he's going to eventually get darker. But be'etzem, the Jewish color is white and pink, and the Jews liked it. And the whiter you were, it was a sign of being richer. Because the whiter you were, it meant to say you didn't have to work outdoors. And therefore you spent your time indoors, which meant to say you were able to be nice, white, and pink because you weren't attacked from the sun. That, my friends...
That would transfer over to the next generation.
And that, of course, would transfer. Of course, most definitely. Correct. So, this clarifies the whole issue. The Pirkei Avlezer puts it into perspective. There's no contradictions, no issues whatsoever.
The implication from the pasuk of Shchedi v'nova is that black would not be beautiful, and the chiddush is that although I am black, I am nevertheless beautiful.
Most definitely, of course. That's what the pasuk is saying clearly.
Yeah.
I told you clearly. This is the ancient Israelites' taste. Take it up with them. That was their taste. Today, people have different kinds of tastes. Our idea of beauty is changing tremendously. The whole concept of beauty used to be, you know what? For all those that have, I'll tell you something interesting. Even in Judaism, you see that in later generations, some of the Ashkenazi rabbis prioritized darker. I don't have blonde hair. I have dark brown hair. Some people have black hair. You should know that the Medrash considers golden hair even nicer in a way. Don't get offended. It's different types of look, but you should know there's nice statements about black hair also. We'll get to that in a moment. Everything in the perspective. You should know, don't worry. The Rebbe had black hair, by the way. The reality is that there is, you should know firmly, that there is, in later generations, mentalities change, people change. You have to understand, that's just the way it is. Nishtanu ativim. It's a major principle. We're not allowed to use today the medicines of the Gemara. Minus one medicine, which Maharil mentions works, whatever. But otherwise, whatever, actually, there is one medicine that they use. Look it up in Shulchan Aruch. Akiva Eiger brings down as I go. There's one thing you're allowed to use, but generally speaking, we're not allowed to use the medicines of the Gemara. Why not? The nature's changed. Along with nature's changing, you could also change the style of beauty that we prioritize. It's only normal. Once again, if anybody walks out of this class with any crazy ideas of superiority of race over race, he's just defeating the whole purpose of this class and making me also upset, because that's mamish not how I think, not who I am. I really legitimately respect all races with great, great, great respect. It's part of my genetics, how I was raised. It's part of our genetics. And I don't give this class every day, by the way. We don't indulge in this class. This is a class we give once in a Yovel, just to establish historic reality. I'm sorry, what is that?
I'm saying Shem and Yefes are saying we're different skin color. Right?
Most definitely. Then Chum, most definitely, of course.
Right.
That's even according to the Medrash.
Shem and Yefes themselves were different color.
That's clearly according to all these Medrashim. Now, when I say even according to the Medrash, I mean according to the Medrashim that we just learned, of course. You see clearly Shem and Yefes are one way and Chum is another way, of course.
It's interesting because Germania, we say come from Yefes, and we're
Correct.
comparing Yidden's color to Germania. That's how
100%. That's what comes up in the Midrash, I'm sure.
No, we're saying that Shem and Yefes themselves are different.
Shem and Yefes, like we come from Shem.
No,
No, not even
Germania
close.
comes from
Yeah,
No,
Yefes.
Yosef is a Semitic, and he's white like a German.
Shem and Yefes is the same
Who
color.
says there's any difference in look between Shem and Yefes? There is.
No, I'm
In
asking.
Hara 8,
It
it
sounds
says
like-
that in
it sounds like that.
Explain, that was
Shem
about
and
the
Yefes.
climate. That was the
That's
climate.
Oh, I just dealt with already.
Yeah.
I dealt with it. Barichas just now. I explained to you. Those that spend time outside, the climate is a hotter
It's not
climate.
inherent white, it's one.
If you took the Medrash alone, writes that those Jews who spent more time indoors were naturally whiter. So being white was considered a rich thing in a way, because if you did spend time outdoors in the hot Middle Eastern sun, you did become dark. So in ancient Israel, those who were whiter with reddish complexion were the richer ones, and those that were darker were the ones that were working out in the fields. That is the fact. Let us go a little bit back.
Shame's children were working in the field.
Not all.
So why
Some were, some weren't.
So what does it mean that Shem were Shchenim?
And
Shame's
David
children.
wasn't
Shame's.
No, that they live in a climate that if they walk outside, if they spend time in the sun, they will get darker, because that is just what the Middle East is, my friend. You can't change that. That is the Middle East. I mean, have you been to Eretz Yisrael? Not everywhere, though. In the Galilee, for example, is different. In the north of Israel, it's actually a very cool climate. It can be freezing. Freezing. Do you know how cold the Galilee can get at night? You can freeze. It's different. The Galilee is different. But for example, the Tel Aviv, Bnei Brak area, yeah, the Kfar Chabad area, oh my. The whole area of Gush Dan is hot like a sauna. And the Negev, oh my. And even Yerushalayim, which is also cooler, but it's not like the Galilee. It's not as different. The Galilee, and especially the Golan, is mamish a whole different ballgame. The Golan, by the way, is mamish a different ballgame. Rabbi Yisai, yeah, I understand. So we're going to try to, if you don't mind, a little. We did start a little bit later. We started 10 minutes late. So we're going to go a little bit longer. I want to finish with you this list. We could finish it. Let me pick up the pace. Is that okay? The gentlemen here agree with picking up the pace. I do want to finish the sources. Let's do it very businesslike. Source. Good. Source, explanation, next. Before I do that, I must first review. So first of all, we'll take a little bit. I waited until it became warmer.
It's not going to make you black. It's not somehow.
Mix in some cold water. You have all the.
It's time to finish them.
A little bit melanin in the skin. It's too warm. It's not.
No, it's more pinkish.
It's the pinkish.
Okay.
Okay. Now, business. 9 we already did, so we're going to move on to 10. 10 is a Mishnah in the Goyim Perek Mishnah Aleph. Bnei Yisrael, says Rabbi Yishmael, Harein ke Ashkeroya. What on earth does Ashkeroya mean? If you take a look at the Tiferes Yisrael, he writes a comment which is not accepted by most of the commentaries. I will mention it. I didn't put it down on the paper because I feel that if there's a comment from an Acharim which doesn't work along with the Rishonim, then I don't. And of course, the Tiferes Yisrael was a giant of giants. He was a German Jewish rabbi, a great rabbi. He was from Germania, but nevertheless, funny that he says a commentary like this. He writes that Eshkeroya, the Lashon is Eshkeroya lo yishchoyim v'li levonim ala beinonim. So he wants to say they were brown looking. But he says himself, it's not Be'etzim brown, they got brown because of the sun. Behind of Be'etzim, they're a white race, but they got sun-tanned. That is not how any of the Rishonim learn. Interestingly enough, the Tiferes Yisrael himself in Yuma Perek Gimel Mishnah Tes identifies Ashkeroya as boxboim, which is the Yiddish and German word for it. We'll soon explain it's the boxes tree. I'll soon show you how it looks like. Rashi in Yuma Lamazayim and Aleph identifies it as Beroish, which the Ravid in his commentary on Teras Kohen and Mitzvah Yidal identifies as Tseva Odoim. That the Beroish, which is the Ashkeroya, is a Tseva Odoim, which means to say it's a reddish, pinkish look. Rabbi Gershon does the best job for us. The Rambam writes clearly that there is a constant in the Goyim Perek Yud Aleph Mishnah Daled that there is a look called Lovon Adamdom. Lovon Adamdom is a mix of white and red, which means to say it's pinkish look. And that fits very, very well with the description of the Ravid on what the Ashkeroya looks. He writes that it's a reddish color. Rabbi Gershon does for us the best favor. That's Rashi's teacher's teacher. He Pashut names it in Old French. medieval French was a language spoken by Ashkenazi Jews, both in Germany as well as England, as well as France. They all spoke. Rabbi Gershom, who had his yeshiva in Mainz, Germany, wrote, nevertheless, his Laz was not German. His Laz was Old French, which is a language that disappeared from the world. That was the original language of the Ashkenazim, till they later adopted Germanic dialects. Originally, they spoke Franco-French dialects, which were, the medieval French didn't sound like French today. It sounded like Latin, basically. So he writes buis, he writes bosso, which is buis, which is bui in modern French. Like in modern French, they mispronounce. In ancient French, they actually pronounce the words fully. They would go buis. That's how they would pronounce it. Buis. That's how they would say it. Or bosso. Or busso, whatever they would pronounce it, but they would actually say the whole word. In modern French, they change it by swallowing letters, which makes modern French very hard to speak. But in any case, what is that? It's the buxus tree. Now, I want to show you all how the buxus tree looks like, so you understand exactly that it looks like the skin color of a typical white Caucasian person. And that's exactly what the commentaries mean when they say reddish. Like the Ravid writes, reddish. Let me show you exactly how it looks like, so nobody has any doubts. And I'm going to show images. Moment. Yeah, take a look. We'll send it around so everybody can see. And please do not click on the phone because it's going to shut off the recording. But just take a look how boxwood looks like and you'll understand this is exactly the skin color of a white Caucasian person. Go ahead. Pass it around please gently. Right? Take a look at that.
Just hold it out.
This is the source of boxwood is the Tiferes Israel, right?
No, the source of boxwood is the Rabbi Gershom word Agoyla and the Rishonim. Tiferes also says it in a different place. Yeah.
What's the context that he mentions it in?
He mentions it Lagabe Yuma, something over there in Yuma, not the context over here, but take a look. And this is the thing, if you take a look, it has a pinkish, you see, take a look at it, look at this. See, it's pinkish? It's mamish, the skin color that all you gentlemen have here around the table. That's exactly what it is. Boxwood. So my friends, Rabbi Yishmael says, he didn't only say white, he literally gave us the exact look of the skin color. Poshit, this, my friends, is the ancient look of the Israelites. They had a reddish, whitish complexion. Classic Caucasian look from Austria, Germany, or Russia. That kind of look. That is. I'm not sure what you're referring to, but basically, yeah, here you see pink, pinkish whitish.
Depends on your lighting or your screen.
It's the light. In any case, you clearly see that
It's ready.
Nice too.
he identifies it as Odoim. The Ravid says it's Odoim, but I'm telling you that's what it is. Okay, now by side, let's move a little bit along here. Next. Esav Harosha was a Gingi. How is it possible if that's 12? How on earth could he have been a Gingi if Jews were not of the Caucasian race? Lahavdil Elef Havdol is David HaMelech, the holy David Malch Israel, was also an Admoini. 13. If you take a look, it says, Doidi Tzach V'Odoim, my lover is white and red. That is a posuk in Shir Hashirim, describing beauty. And Rashi over there says the beauty of a man is actually black, is what? Is reddish skin, a pinkish skin, says it out, along with black hair. That is the beauty of a man. A man's beauty is when he has black hair, but with reddish, whitish skin. As he's up there. No offense to all those here who have blonde hair. The Alter Rebbe had blonde hair. There's also praise for blonde hair in a different medrash. We'll get to that. Eicha is a pasuk that says Tzachu Mecholov. The beauty of Jerusalem was they were white like milk. Next. 15. We already did 15. 16. Brachas Lamed Aleph Lamed Beis. We're finishing up, so we're going to finish in time. So I say, if I can ask you to hold yourselves in and focus, let's show the world we accomplished it. So we did. It's good for us to know we were able to do it as well. 16. Brachas Lamed Aleph Lamed Beis. Chana asks Hashem, give me a son that's not going to be too whitish. He's not going to be like Tzocher, which is not going to be too white like albino, and he's not going to be a person that has a sickness that he's very, very red. It's called Gicher, it's a sickness. He looks like Nebuch, he's being squeezed, like someone squeezing his flesh. Let me ask you, a very, very whitish look and a very, very, very reddish look can only be by a man of the Caucasian race. Sifri Zuta Piska Hey. This is really, 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 really a powerful source. My goodness, this is quite powerful. You want to know what the source is? Let me see if I can find it here. A minute, please. A minute. The Sifri Zuta says that if a woman sinned with a mayam ama sinned with saita, and she didn't pass the test, the water proved her guilty, says the Medrash, she will turn from a nice color to a bad color. What are the two colors the Jewish women had? Hoysam benes, if she was whitish looking, oisin oisa shchoya, the water makes her black looking. Meudemes, if she's more reddish looking, oisin oisa yeroika, it makes her yellow looking. What were the two looks that a woman who came into the Beis Hamikdash had? Either whiter skin or reddish skin. Now, amongst Caucasians themselves, you'll notice some people are more white and some people are more red. Usually people who have black hair, the skin color is white. People who are blondish hair, the skin color is more red. But those were the two colors that they had, reddish or whitish. That was the color. Period, end of story. Next, Yerushalmi Nedorim Perek Aleph, Halacha Aleph, and in various Perek Halacha Dalet, he describes over there, Shimon HaTzadik says, as well as, there's two descriptions over there of describing a beautiful person that says, I saw him, I saw him reddish, with good-looking eyes, with toiv a very good countenance. He had a nice curly face. The classic look of a Yerushalmi Jew. I can find him either way, that's the Maisa, yeah.
What is it about?
Basically, he had curly hair and curly, not just curly face, but curly hair, very elegant curly
This
hair.
one?
It's describing over there, specifically, it was describing Shimon HaTzadik was describing a Nazir in the first source. In the second source, it's the story of Rabbi Yeshua that went to Rome and saved a certain child. Next, we're skipping a lot of stuff.
With his sister, right?
I'm sorry.
The boy with his sister.
There's a medrash. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's connected to that. Yeah, there's another beautiful description above him. This is such a gorgeous description. The Gemara describes the beauty of Rabbi Yechon. You see Chazal. Besides the goodness of Chazal, the greatness, they push it how to describe things better than anybody else. They had a power of description that has never been paralleled in history. But when we see a Peidalet Omar Aleph, a beautiful description. I want to read briefly the description. The beauty of Rabbi Yechanan. Says Rabbi Yechanan, I remain from the beauty of Jerusalem. You want to know how to see my beauty? Bring a cup that is made out of silver that just comes out of the smith, so it still has a yellowish look, a yellowish reddish look from the fire. Fill it up with seeds of pomegranate, red seeds of pomegranate. Put it, surround it by red roses. Place it half under the shade and half under the sun, and the shine that comes out is the beauty of Rabbi Yechanan. My friends, a reddish, pinkish complexion.
He was also quite corpulent, though.
Now, Zohar Shemois does for us an incredible favor. And for any one of those secular Meshigoyim that want to say the Zohar was not written, first of all, it, according to them, was written by a Sephardic Jew. Moshe, the great Moshe de Leon. So it's a Sephardic Jew saying, so that, that puts them in a hard position, anyone who's trying to argue with this Zohar. But Kfirad Mamish heresy, chutzpah, to go and say the Zohar wasn't written by Rav Shimon Yochai. Even Professor Yehuda David Eisenstein, who was arguably one of the greatest scholars on Chumah Midrashim, Professor Yehuda David Eisenstein, who was a very modern, he was frum, but very modern Orthodox, and wrote many things that made rabbis put him in Chayrim, even put his books in Chayrim. He writes on the Zohar, anyone who says the Zohar wasn't written by Rashbi is a fool. Is a fool. How stupid could you be? And it's such a shame you have to deal with all these crazy statements. The Zohar HaKodesh from Rashbi, from the Tanna L'Koy, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the Zohar in Shmois Yitzchak Aleph says clearly that the Jewish people had in the Midbar the following colors of hair. Okay, we're finishing up. So just bear with me. I'm finishing. I'm trying my best. Please. on the pasuk Va'ata Sechas we call Aman Shechayel. Where does that come from? Yisrael, right? It says like this: the following were the looks. They had white hair. They are called Anshe Chayil. People with white hair are the guys who are Anshe Chayil. They're very brave. People that have red hair are called Yirei Elikim. It's a sign of fear of heaven. People that have Seor Yorik, but Yorik doesn't mean green. Yorik back then meant yellow. Golden. People that have golden hair, they're Anshe Emes. It's a sign of truth, and they're connected to Yaakov. Who Yaakov, it says, Tikkun Emes. Give Emes to Yaakov. Yosef looked like Yaakov, and Hitaka had a Germanic look. Get the connection? Isn't that incredible? And black hair, which they are the ones that on them it says Shchoiran Ivanova, the same Lashon of the Prickly Rabbi. And they are Sine Botza, people with black hair. You can't. They have a power to hate Gashmistic and money. They don't get spoiled for money. You can't bribe them. So the Zohar describes that in ancient times in Israel, you had all four hair colors. Could you have had all four hair colors if you didn't have the Caucasian race? Next, Oitzim Midrashim Eisenstein Omachim Lites. It speaks over there about looking for a beautiful woman. And it says over there, it speaks about a king that was looking for a beautiful woman. And it says, what was the beautiful woman? Golden hair. Golden hair that looks similar to gold. That's considered the beauty. The Hainu that he's describing that as the main beauty. 22 is a very interesting source. Ksubas Dafnatesa Mabeis. Why, my goodness, this is in a way I think the one that shocked me the most of all, because I didn't expect that they actually give a practical suggestion how to get a whiter skin color. But the ancient Israelites loved the white look so much they actually looked for ways to get a person to get as white as possible. If he wants that his daughter should look very, very white, so she should be beautiful, give her to drink little chickens. And the Ashkenach Chol of Samach Lepirka, and close to the time of the Nida, he should give her to drink. No, I have to look at what Lepirka means over there. No, it could be it means when she matures. Could be Pirka means when she matures. Yeah, when she matures. Close by when she matures. Yes, that's the Pashtas what it means. Give her to drink cholov, milk. He wants his daughter to become whitish. You see how much they crave that. Look. Nedonim, Bafnun on the base. The daughter of the Kaser tells her Yeshua ben Hananiah, Toira in an ugly keli. Right, and of course he gave her the famous mashal, you all know the story. He asked her to put the wine instead of in cheres kelim, to put the wine in gold and silver can, it tasted terrible. So the kid said, it doesn't become a chum can, but beautiful. But there's a whole shot over there, and then look at the Maharal, all in the Forshim, but whatever. He said over there that if a Talmud Chacham looks ugly, doesn't look good, it actually makes him a bigger Talmud Chacham. You have to understand exactly what that means, what's pshat, could be it's more of a ruchnistic Indian, because there is an Indian of Hadras of the Indian of Balach B'Yafiyat Chesed Nechla, and Rabbi Yechon was no less Talmud Chacham than anybody else, and he was beautiful, so right? But he says, the Rosh explains over there, what's the Chli Mechuor? Okay, once again, if you're going to bring this into a debate table, I'll tell you, oh, that's the later Ashkenazi source, fine, say it. But it should be noted that the Rosh also was a great rabbi in a Sephardic country, known as Spain. And he was very, very powerful, except even named their families after him, Ben Arosh. So the Rosh writes, he was dark looking. Okay, we're almost done.
What happened to 23?
What
happened to 23?
That was 23.
No, 23, Isha Kushis. Isha Kushis Lokach, if you take a look over there, it says over there that they said Isha Kushis. That Sipoida was a Isha Kushis. If you take a look over there, what does the Medrash say? Rashi brings down the Medrash over there. What Rashi brings down the Medrash over there, but what does it say over there? It says that Rashi brings down over there that from Chazal, Rashi brings down from Chazal, the same way everybody admits that a black man is black, the same way everybody admits she was beautiful, the Hainu, and that she was also, not just that she was pure and licensed, she was pure in all of her actions, she was very, very pure in her conduct and the way she behaved herself, she was pure and holy and righteous. And the same way everybody admits, no, I'm sorry, I have a lotion here. Hashem lo yonikris kushis, kodem akeres b'nei kushi, kedei shalitish l'boy ayin hor. Yeah, it's different Pirushim, yeah. That a person calls, this is the one I was looking for, this is one I was zooming into. That a person calls a son, black man, in order to not make, the ancient Israelites would, in order to not make ayin hara on him or her, that people shouldn't make ayin hara, which means to say black is considered by the ancient Israelites the opposite of beauty. And that's why they called her Kushis, because she was so beautiful. They called her Kushis. It shouldn't be ayin hara. People shouldn't have a bad eye on her.
Is the Pasuk shot Kush is like Ethiopia?
Oh, so that, well, Rashi's people should be covered. If you take a look at the other Rishonim, Rabbi Yaakov Bar Osher, Rabbi Nobachi Bar Osher, Ibn Chalawa, who was one of the great Sephardic Rishonim, so he brings down that Kushis actually was Tzipoida, was a Midianist. She was from Midian, which is northern Arabia or southern Jordan, and they were Yishmaelim, and because of the heat of the sun, they get very, very dark, and they don't have any white. And she was basically, and they were criticizing Moshe for marrying a woman that wasn't beautiful, because she's not attractive enough. Can you imagine that's how they want to interpret? And one of the interpreters is a Sephardic interpreter, Rabbi Nabachi Bar Osher Ibn Chalawa, who was actually a Sephardic commentator. So you see this was the attitude of the ancient Israelites. Okay, where are we holding now? 25. 25. Nedorim Perek Tes Mishnah Yud. If a guy, this is Mamash, an ancient source. The Mishnah! Nedorim Perek Tes Mishnah Yud, it says over there, if a guy makes a neder, I'm going to marry an ugly woman. I'm sorry. I'm making a neder that I will. That I'm not going to marry this woman who is ugly, and then turns out she's beautiful. And then he goes on to specify black. He thought she was black. Turns out she was white. Short. She's tall. So I discovered she was beautiful. What's the definition of beautiful? Tall and white. Weiter. Pretty toyar. You know the Pitoyer is a Chayam HaKadosh Yedidei Siman Yudches Sivkot Yud Gimel. That's a Sephardic source from one of the great holy rabbis, the great Moroccan rabbi, Rabbeinu Chaim ben Attar. Ibn Attar. So basically what does he say? He writes the Chazal was so holy and they purified their bodies so much that they were very whitish looking. Chazal, their flesh was kischuchis levona, white like glass. They purified themselves so they became white. Now, give me a moment, please. We're reaching the conclusion now. I've always said the sources I gave here are less than a fifth of the actual sources that exist on the subject, but we'll have to suffice with this.
Are those the main sources that you gave us?
Those are the main sources, but there's so many more sources. I can just go on without another subject. It's one article, another article. Yes. Give me a moment, please. One moment, okay? I need your patience. Now, there is a great scholar. One second. Hey, phone is a little tough on me now. Give me a moment. There was a great Sephardic rabbi by the name of Avraham Saba. Saba spelled with an I at the end. Saba. He was a great rabbi, born 1440, passed away 1508. He wrote a sefer called Srei Hamoyer. Srei Hamoyer is a very powerful sefer. And he writes over there, Rabbi said, please, we're finishing up. This is the last stretch. Be brave. Be brave. Be brave, Rabbi said. Be brave. He says over there, clearly, that the reason why the Jewish women, some of them became black, was because they served the sun too much and they served the moon. But if they go back to serving Hashem, they can easily become white again. That's a Sephardic rabbi, Rabbi Avraham Saba. Samach Beis Ayin.
Should overnight become white?
They can become white again. The last one is from a great Turkish rabbi who immigrated to France. His name was Yosef Halevi. And I'll tell you an interesting thing he has over here. One second. I didn't actually write. It's the Avraham Saba. I'll tell you where it is. Just wanted to know where it is inside. Srei Hamoyer Dvorim Yud Gimel Zayin. Dvorim Yud Gimel Zayin. You can write that down. Dvorim Yud Gimel Zayin. There was a great Turkish Jew who was born in Turkey. He later immigrated to France, but he wasn't actually from France. He was a Turkish Jew originally, but he spoke French fluently, and he moved to France, but originally he's from Turkish Sephardic background. His name was Yosef Halevi. Yosef Halevi is recorded as having traveled to Yemen. When he came to not to Yemen, to the Falashim, to the Ethiopian Jews. Now, the Ethiopian Jews have to convert because they're not actually Jewish. It's not, Farket, by saying the Jewish, you're harming them the most, because then they didn't keep proper halachas, they never had proper divorce bills, which means that when they would divorce each other, they were really still married according to halacha, and then they're all mamzer. So the best thing for them is to say they're not Jewish, but they have Jewish blood, which we do believe they have Jewish blood, but they're not Jewish, and then if they want, they can convert, and they can start fresh. So it's the worst thing to say they're Jewish, but in any case, he was arguing with them, and they were telling him that they're Jewish. And if you take a look at the Sefer, Mas'ot Chabshush, Chabush or Habash is one of the names for Ethiopia. Ches Beis Shin, Ches Beis Vov Shin, Ches Beis Shin Vov Shin, different ways of pronouncing it, but it's Habash, which is basically the area of Ethiopia, where the Ethiopian people who call themselves Jews come from. If you look in Mas'ot Chabshush, printed in Yerushalayim Tafshin and Gimel, page 40-41, it says Yosef Halevi actually traveled to the land of Chabash, and he argued with them, and they were telling him that you are not Jewish because you're white. He was a great Sephardic Jewish rabbi. He wasn't really much, he was more of a poet and a scholar than a rabbi, but he was a great scholar, and they told him, you're not Jewish because you're white. And they quoted to him the pasuk from Shir Hashirim. Obviously they couldn't speak in Hebrew, but they were able to speak Amharic and other languages, so they could be conversed in French also, because a lot of those areas were colonized by France. So in any case, they told them, you're not Jewish, and they quoted him the verse from Shir Hashirim, which of course they didn't know from the original because they didn't speak Hebrew, but they did have translations, that it says, Shcheira Yunava. So he immediately told them, Al tiruni shani shchalchenes, sheshazafasni hashemesh. In other words, he right away quoted the next verse, don't say I'm black, I just got a suntan, which means to say the Jews betzim are white. The last point I will say is that Sephardic Jews, why are some Sephardic Jews so dark? The answer is simple. Number one, you must understand that every country Jews went to, there was a very, very small percentage of convert blood in their veins. Everyone at this table has a very small percentage. Tiny, incy, wincy, schmincy, vincy, but nevertheless.
Rashi comes from Rus.
Correct. Rashi comes from Rus. There's always a little bit of convert blood. Be reminded, it's always less than 60%. It's usually less than 90%. It's about 2% or something. They did actually a study on famous personalities in Israel. Give me a second. Need the water. They did a study on famous personalities in Israel. They had a documentary. They took Rabbi Lau's blood, the different blood, and Rabbi Lau was 96% pure Ashkenazi Jewish blood, 4% blood from Nordic. So they asked him, Yadua likvod harav al giurim b'mishpacha? He says, Lo yadua li al shum giurim, אנחנו משפחה של רבנים לדורי דורות, 30 דורות אחורה. Basically the point is that Rabbi Lau and every person in this room probably has a small percentage of Goyish blood, very small. You have to bear in mind also why it's so small. Nobody wanted to convert to a persecuted people that were isolated. Jews were basically the genetics are so tight that they just dug up now about 30 bodies. You heard about it in Erfurt in Germany, and they found, and also they rediscovered bodies from Norwich, England. And the genetics of those Ashkenazi Jews, that was the Tkuf of Rashi Rabbeinu Tam, is the exact same genetics as Ashkenazi Jews today. It's incredible. So there's very little conversions, but nevertheless, if you dig into Jewish blood, there will be a small amount of converts in every single community, which affects the look a little bit, slightly. Also, the climate affects the look, and also, it should be noted that not all Sephardim, so the climate affects the look, some small amounts of converts affect the look. The climate affects look, especially in places like Yemen, which is much hotter than Israel. You think Israel is hot? Wait until you get to Yemen. And by the way, Sephardim who lived in Israel for many generations don't look that dark. As a matter of fact, Lebanese and Syrian Sephardim, some of them are dark, but very, very many of them are very, very white. You go to Mexico City, you see all these Chalabim, they look white like Ashkenazim, you can't tell the difference. You literally cannot tell. I have a close friend who's a Jew from Chalabi background, both parents Syrian background. He's whiter than me. And you have many of them who have blonde hair, blue eyes. You should just know it's a big mythology that all Sephardim, mythological tale, which is not true. It's a big myth that all Sephardim are dark. Some of them are darker based on the climates and also based on a certain amount of converts. And I'm not saying they have more converts than Ashkenazim. All Jewish communities have little bitsy bits of converts, very, very small. You know, by the way, anything less than 60% doesn't even count for the main gene pool. But it could affect a little bit of look, and usually it's much less than 90%. It's usually 98% Jewish blood, 2% some other blood of converts. It's very, very little. That might be changing in the future generations, by the way, because we're not a persecuted people, Baruch Hashem, anymore, and therefore many, many more people will start coming into the community, and you'll start finding that Jewish genes are no longer going to be as pure as they were. And from a halachic perspective, it's not an issue. It's not an issue at all. But it's just a fact. But upon them either way, the reality is this is the fact. Now, the proof that Jewish people today don't have to shun any dark skin, and that even see an advantage in darker look, comes from a great scholar known as Rabbi, I didn't put it on the page, but Eliyahu Lowenz. Eliyahu Lowenz was known as Eliyahu Baal Shem, the great Rabbi Eliyahu Baal Shem, one of the three people that carry the title of Rabbi Eliyahu Baal Shem. He's not the Rabbi Eliyahu Baal Shem of Sefer HaZechariah. He's one of the three people that carry that title. He was a descendant of Rabbi Yosselman of Rosenheim, who was a descendant of Rashi from the Lowenz family that goes back to medieval France, to Rashi. He lived in Germany in the city of Worms. Great, great scholar. Rabbi Eliyahu Lowenz.
So he's not the Hashem of Worms of his friends?
No, it's people that, there was more than one Baal. There's three people that carry the title of Eliyahu Baal Shem.
Of Worms?
No, but there's one in Chelm, and then there's one in Worms, and then there's one that was born in Krakow and then eventually immigrated to Worms. And there's three Eliyahu Baal Shems. Eliyahu Baal Shems. In any case, he writes over there like this. He says that those that have, he writes this clearly, I'll tell you where. Rinas Doiden, a commentary on Ashirim, published in Beitar Elite, Tafshis on Beis on Peiches. He writes over there that people that have darker hair and stronger, and their darker hair shows on strength and power, which means to say that the darker look was not shunned. I guess in later generations it could be that the teva of people changed, and therefore today we don't shun any black look whatsoever in any way, shape, or form. We don't shun any black look. This was the ancient Israelites had their taste, but today we don't shun the black look in any way, shape, or form. And I'll finish off by saying every race should be proud of itself. Every race has so much to offer. Every race has such a beautiful heritage. We even, of course, because we're Jewish people, not as a race, but as a religion, we don't talk about the racial aspect, but as a religion, have the greatest heritage. But our heritage is open to everybody, equally, whether black, Chinese, white, anything. And we do not distinguish between races. Every race has its own special, unique story to tell, its own special beauty to give. And the main thing is to know the reality. But if anybody dare come and speak against Ashkenazi Jews and talk stupidity, whether it's Kanye West or Nick Fuentes, I just mentioned a black person and a white person, or any other racist or anti-Semite that is propagating stupidity about Khazar theory. How stupid could you be? Khazar. The Ashkenazi Jews came to the area where the Khazars lived 300 years or 200, at least 200 years after the Khazars were long destroyed by the Mongolians and the Rus. And not just that, most of the Khazars didn't convert. It was only the heads of the tribes. And not just that, the only record of Khazars that actually do exist are in Turkey, a non-Ashkenazi community. You have the great Rabbi Yamin of Toledo said he saw some Khazar Gerim in Turkey.
Some of them did officially convert.
Yeah,
it wasn't the Israeli.
no, the heads of the families, of the royalty, and they moved to Turkey. Why Turkey? Because the Khazars were not a German-speaking people. Mm-hmm. They were a Turkic-speaking people. If Ashkenazim were Khazars, first of all, how are we Khazars? We showed up in Eastern Europe at least 200 and usually 300 years after the Khazars were long gone. Secondly, most of the Khazars didn't even convert. Thirdly, any record of them was only found in Turkey because they were a Turkic-speaking people. They spoke a language of Turkish. They were a Turkic-speaking people. And therefore their language was a Turkic language. So how on earth do they have anything to do with the Ashkenazi Jews who speak a Germanic language called Yiddish? What's the kesher? Not just that, Rashi and the Balei HaTosfos are Gadim, like the people who are the main interpreters of the Talmud are all Gadim. I mean, that makes sense to you. Yeah, I understand.
It's a Kiddush, and we all know about it.
Exactly. But you want to tell me that Rashi and
Uncle
Balei
it's a big deal.
I'm not saying something.
No, listen to me.
I'm just saying this.
I'm answering. It doesn't make any sense to say that's exactly, you just answered very nicely on the spot. That's a chiddush. You highlight that. The fact of the matter is, you want to tell me that all the Balei HaTosfos, all these great commentators who are the main commentators of Judaism, who are the main commentators of Judaism, they're the ones that are gay. Does that make sense to you? Yeah.
I'm not saying
usually you have to understand also.
these things are true.
You have to understand also something else. the biggest proof on Judaism is the tradition of the Torah. Whoever holds the tradition of the Torah, he's the authentic Jew. To say that the great interpreters of the Talmud are all converts just doesn't make sense in single.
But that's their argument, even though it doesn't make sense. They're really
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
That doesn't make
Trying to
any
discredit
sense.
the whole
That
value
doesn't-
of being a
Okay,
Jew.
so they're hacking in China. But in any case, it's Pabamaisis, it never happened. There's no connection. Ashkenazi Jews have nothing to do with Khazars when they showed up. The Khazars, the Chal, have to do with Sephardim. The only Khazars we know live in Turkey, or some of the Kafkazi Jews have a tradition. They alone say it. Some of the Kafkazi Jews claim to be descendants of, not all, but some of the Kafkazi Jews claim, some of them claim to be from, have a tradition that they come from Shevet Naphtali.
The famous
But
interaction between
some
the rabbi
of
and
the Kafkaz Jews come from claim to be from the Khazars, and it makes sense because the Kafkaz speak a language that is Turkic based. Many of them, not all of them, but many of them.
So we have Levim and Kohen.
Of course, but the whole thing is a sheker. Okay, we don't have to deal with Bava Mice. It's been disproven. It's discredited. The theory is discredited and be called the Kol, Gehacked and Kop, Gehacked and China.
The famous story of Rabbi Yeshua Levi debating or discussing with the Khazar royalty, that didn't actually happen?
Not even sure, Rabbi Yehuda.
Rabbi Yehuda Levi,
No, it
yeah.
happened, of course, but that was with the royalty.
And
it wasn't
he convinced them
It
to
wasn't Rabbi
convert
Levi. Rabbi Levi is quoting a previous debate from Rabbi Yitzchak Hassan Gadi.
It's not like a mushal that...
And by the way, Rabbi Yitzchak Hassan Gadi came from Greece, not from Germany.
Okay.
Although, I will tell you that the Jews of Greece were connected to Ashkenaz because the Greek Jews were from the Christian world, but nevertheless, it's not technically Germany, but they did come from the Christian world, but the Khazar Jews had nothing to do with the Jews of Germany, and they had nothing to do with Ashkenazim. The only place we have a record of them ever going to is Turkey, which makes sense because they were a Turkic-speaking people. And they have nothing to do with Ashkenazim. We're coming from the German Rhineland and Italy and France. There's no kesher whatsoever. It's gahakt and kop. It doesn't even begin. Even genetically, the genes of the Ashkenazi Jews goes back to the genes of the German Rhineland. And the Jews of the German Rhineland, their genes goes back to the Jews of Rome, or the Jews of Babylon, whose genes goes back to Eretz Yisrael. If we were Khazars, we should have seen Turkic genetics in us. That we should have similarity to the Mongols and the Turks.
Right.
There's no connection.
Impossible.
Sheker v'chazal, it's pashut a lie. It's
When was it
discredited
made
in
up?
the
When was
Holocaust.
it established? When was it
Wasn't it
They
like a
can
Russian...
go on and say whatever they want with all their lies. We know the
Russian
truth.
and-
We're ending the class. And Mitzvah Hashem, I'm not ashamed to say, but I did this class with great Mesilas Nefesh from my point because I have the flu, and nevertheless I came because I try to make the class consistent. I hope you all enjoy the paper.
Thank you very much.